Hi, I'm Paul Rudd.
And I'm Tim Greenberg.
And you are in...
We are? We are. Somebody is in studio.
They are.
With the Hollywood Reporter.
But we're not in sync.
All right, well, thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Now, your new show, Living With Yourself, is about a man that sets out to be a better version of himself, but he accidentally clones himself in the process. Now, first of all, this is such a well-written show, and it's also a really witty concept. So if you guys can talk a little bit about where the idea or inspiration for this show stemmed from.
I mean, you know, I've had the idea in different versions over the years. I think it started to gel, though, once I got married and had a family and realized that that I was often the least good version of myself with the ones that I love the most. You know, and why is that? Why is it that we should be the best versions of ourselves with the ones we love the most, but we often are not? And why is that? And that was sort of a daily challenge for me. And then, you know, that sort of lent itself to this idea that I'd had in a different format of what if there was another you? And so I think it was a way to talk about like the kinds of things that I dealt with on a daily basis and the way that we live our lives with our friends and our family and our coworkers, but do it in a really fun and interesting way.
Yeah, I love that. Now,
yeah, no, as did I. I mean, when I read them, they were all written. It's a rare thing that you get to read 8 episodes of a show. Normally there's 1 or 2, and then with a page, it's talking about where this is going to go. And I was taken with it right away. And one of the things that I could tell, besides the fact that it was so well written, was that it was a singular voice, and one person wrote every episode, which is rare, but that the writer had spent a lot of time with it, because there is such complexity to the story, and it is a jigsaw puzzle, and you could read something in episode 2, and then all of a sudden I'd get to episode 5 and say, oh my God, whoa, I've just seen this, but well, now I'm looking at it through a completely different perspective. And that kind of structure, that kind of care takes work. And so I was immediately impressed by just how much thought went into it, let alone skill.
Yeah, and that is what I loved about the show. It is that it took you on a journey too. And it was so hard for me to place what I would call this. Is it a comedy? Is it a thriller? Is it a drama? Because it really did take you through the journey of these characters, and even putting the pieces together by watching each episode together. It was really well written.
Thank you. Thanks. I mean, that was important. I think the tone was something that we agreed on right from the get-go, and I think some of that is in the scripts, but I think some of it is just in terms of our shared sensibility, you know, that it could be all of those things at once. Was, I think, a big reason to making it work, and why we worked well together, and also with John and Val, the directors, that I think we all knew what the tone wanted to be, and that was kind of key from the beginning.
Yeah. Now, Paula, you're on double duty for this show. What was it like having to play opposite of yourself?
It was new. I'd never done it before, and you know, there was a learning curve, because while it's not a new convention, there's no one way to do it. So I think through some camera tests and rehearsals, we zeroed in on the way that it was going to work best for us. And so it turned out that not having an acting double, but instead acting out the scene as both characters for the rehearsals, and blocking and camera and all of that kind of thing, was the way we would start it off, and then I would record the audio for both characters, and then whichever character was driving the scene is the one I would film first. Okay. And then I would use the audio track of what I had just recorded to play through my ear in a little thing called an earwig I put in my ear. And so I would act and pretend that I was opposite myself, but I wasn't acting to anybody, but I would say the line, and then somebody off camera, off screen would hit a button on an iPad that it had all the audio tracks had been synced up, so I'd get the response, so I'd hear myself. But it was important to me, because I just thought, if I act opposite a stand-in, even though you would never see his face, or there's no face replacement or any of that, I would still be going off of whatever that other person was doing. and I didn't want that.
Yeah.
And what was fantastic about that was he had the ability to, before making the scene, construct in his brain how it was going to go and how both sides of the performances go and all the arcs and all of that. And that was necessary to achieve what he achieved, but also I thought really amazing that to be able to have that ability going into it. I mean, it's a lot like writing, where you have in your head, here's how it's going to go. And he was able to, as you've talked about, like control both sides. And so he was really able to sculpt it the way that he wanted. And I thought it turned out fantastic for that.
Yeah.
One of the challenges for us, I think, would be the eye lines.
Yeah.
Because that was honestly, you know, as soon as we'd have a take, I would kind of like change over into the other guy's clothes and hair and all that stuff, and then we'd have to set it so that it looked like we were looking at each other, and that became, I think, one of the real challenges, because we didn't want it to be a single of Old Miles and then turn around and then you see the single of New Miles, and instead try and find those opportunities where we can get both the characters in the same frame, and even have long oneers where both characters are moving in and around each other and there are no cutaways. And those technical challenges take a lot of time to hammer out.
Yeah, and I was even going to add some of those fighting sequences. That must have been hard to choreograph.
That was actually the one episode where, and there's a lot of fighting, was because of that fighting. So we did have stand-ins and doubles and triples and quadruples.
Yeah.
I mean, there were
There was literally 5 other Pauls on those days on the same outfit sometimes.
Oh my gosh.
because you need it to see flips and fights. You need to have other bodies. You can't just overlay characters. And so it did look like a scene from Multiplicity.
Yeah.
Really, you turn around and say, "Hey, Paul." It's like, that's not Paul. Hey, Paul. God damn it, that's not Paul either.
It was weird.
That's amazing. But yeah, because it is cool because of the movement in the show is so fast, especially in those fighting sequences.
Yeah.
How weird was it to watch it all back in post, because you didn't have someone else standing in for you, so it really must have been crazy to see double.
It's gratifying to see it that it works. You know, you were in post. Tim was in the editing room every day. I wasn't. So you saw every kind of iteration. So it was probably more startling for me, because when I saw it, it was kind of done.
There were also times, though, even when we were shooting live, where he can't see this. He's out there in space, but we could see an overlay. And so we could see live sometimes how the performances were matching up, and it was great. I mean, you'd be sitting there going like, "Oh, look at that was great," you know, trying to stay silent.
And seeing it all come together.
Sometimes you could hear Val, one of the directors, you'd hear her go like, react to how great something was going, and then we'd have to like edit out that little sound bit.
we would kind of, before I filmed the second character, we'd study this take that we'd already completed. You know, it's like if I'm going in to do Old Miles and we've already filmed New Miles, I would look at New Miles, what we shot, and as we're standing kind of huddled around the monitor, say, okay, all right, so I walk here, but then, oh look, New Miles is picking up a tissue right there, and then he's throwing it in the garbage right there, and it's on that word. And so I would just think, okay, so when I hear that, I know that my eyes have to go like this, and I'm watching where I throw it away in the trash can. So it's a bit of choreography, and there was a real charge when it did work. And thankfully, because of just the technology, even though it's an overlay and it's shoddy, you at least get a general idea of like, okay, that really does, that will work together in an edit when we can, you know, really do the timing right. But when we'd see it on a playback, it was very exciting.
During I think that was that particular long shot, because it all has to work in one. It was like watching, you know, a sporting event where you're going like, oh, hey, yo, we got what? Oh, yes, we got it. You know, like, that worked. You know,
because you go for 2 minutes and it's like, all right, I know there's 20 more seconds of this scene, and if something goes wrong, it's like, well, the whole thing's scrapped. You know, it's a oneer.
Yeah. Speaking of sporting event, you got a nice little cameo from Tom Brady in this, leaving a day spa, no less. How did you swing that, and what was the process of having him on set?
We asked him,
Yeah.
and first he had to finish a little something called winning the Super Bowl. But once he was done with that, he was able to get back to
Getting
us.
to the Super Bowl
Yeah.
and then winning the Super Bowl. Yeah.
He became only more of a perfect clone while we were shooting. We asked him, and he eventually said yes. That was.
It was really
he wrote an email, right?
Yeah.
That's great.
But it was really exciting because while we were filming it, we thought, well, who else can we use? Because the odds that Tom Brady are going to say yes to being in our show are probably slim. So we were elated that he said yes, first of all, and he was great, man. That was a really cool day. But he also is the perfect example of somebody who just, it seems to be a 10 in every category.
Yeah.
And so while we came up with other people that we could go to play that part there, they all seem like second choices in a way, because Tom
Compared.
Brady's...
Yeah.
Comparatively.
Yeah.
He's the benchmark
He's
right
everything.
there.
Yeah, I mean. his
Everybody
whole
else
life.
has 6 rings and
I love that.
playing at 42 and
And now he's doing it again. What are they?
yeah.
5-0, 6-0?
Yeah.
As a
I know.
diehard Chiefs fan, though,
Yeah.
Paul, how'd you feel about having
It was
Tom
really,
Brady?
it was
on
really
set?
really it was hard because I'm not a Patriots fan, and I'm a Chiefs fan, as you say, and this was not that long after the Chiefs lost to the Patriots
Yes.
in the championship game. So it was a series of emotions, and ultimately the football fan in me won out, because I don't care, and I've had this conversation with my son, who is not a Patriots fan. To be a fan of the sport, or to be a fan of just any sport, you have to just respect and be impressed by the abilities and of anybody that excels like that. And so I was really excited to meet somebody who was just that good. And he was really like a lovely guy. He was a great dude. And and he was very open, talking about the team, talking about, being Tom Brady. I said, what is that like to live in Boston and be Tom Brady?
Yeah.
Get it. And he's forthcoming about so many things, and was so easy to be around that, I came away, it's like, I'm a Tom Brady fan. That guy is pretty awesome.
So going off the premise of the show, if you guys were to clone yourselves, what would a new and improved version of Tim Greenberg and Paul Rudd look like? I don't know if there is one.
I'd be 6 inches taller.
Yeah, me too.
I think I would be less quick to anger, perhaps. I would be less, I'd be more willing to go take that dance rather than sit in the corner and not have as much fun as I probably should have. I'd probably be annoying because of it, the on guy, but,
What about fears? Would you have any fears that would be eradicated?
I mean, that's kind of the whole thing, I mean, yeah, about 1,000 fears. I mean, I think that's the difference between the two characters is the new one doesn't have as much fear. He doesn't have as much fear of failure, of anything, of getting burned from the stove, and so it opens him up and allows him to be, open to the world and to be unselfish. I think that selfishness is driven by fear, really, So that would be great, but I also feel like that person would get to be tiresome after a while, so
Yeah.
I'll try to get there. How about you? Nothing.
Well,
Exactly the same.
You don't need a clone. I think you're right.
Yeah.
He doesn't.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think it's the first thing you said about quick to anger. I think patience, I would like to maybe have a bit more. I feel like I've had more of it at other points in my life. So I've actually said that in the interviews. Like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, same. We think alike.
Yeah.
And yeah, the fears hold us back in every single way, and if we can get rid of those, we can do a lot of really good things.
Well, I think I am looking at the best version of both of you guys. And again, you did a wonderful job creating the show, acting in the show, and thank you guys again for being here.
Thank you so much.